Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Hum, a Kansas Hoops podcast via the Field of 68. As you can see, we have a special guest today. We have Alec Busse from CycloneAlert, the 24/7 sports page covering Iowa State. Alec does some football coverage, does some basketball coverage for the Cyclones. So, really glad to have him on today because we're discussing a huge matchup. Number 5, Iowa State taking on number 9, Kansas at home. The Jayhawks are rolling, winners of 8 straight, and the Cyclones just dropped one before this game. And Kansas now has had to play BYU after a loss, Texas Tech after a loss, and now have to deal with a pissed off Cyclones team. I guess where we'll start, Alec, is just kind of what went wrong for Iowa State against TCU. What'd you kind of see in that game, and how are they kind of trying to get past that, moving on to this game Saturday?
Yo, first of all, thanks for having me on. I would say the same thing that went wrong for Iowa State and the loss to TCU is the same thing that went wrong for them in the loss to Cincinnati, and maybe to a little bit of a degree, the loss to Kansas as well. Iowa State turned it over 17 times on Tuesday night at TCU. They did not shoot the ball well from the perimeter at TCU. I think they went just 5 of 23 from deep. And when this Iowa State team doesn't turn people over, offense becomes a little bit more challenging for them. I didn't think their ball movement was great, particularly in the second half. You're going to look at the numbers and see that they had 20 assists on whatever it was on a number of made field goals, but I think they had 14 assists on their first 14 made baskets. But TJ Otzberger would tell you that it stuck a little bit at times. I kind of felt that way, and they just didn't play well. I think the reaction from the Iowa State fan base after Tuesday's loss has been pretty frustrating. I've seen some people say that they're going to fall all the way to a number 6 seed. I have seen other people say the ceiling of this team is a Sweet 16. I think that is a little bit exaggerative, Sam. Myself, I still think that this is a team that is capable of making it to the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, potentially the Final Four. I think this is a team that can compete for a top 2 or 3 seed in the Big 12 tournament. I think winning the Big 12 now is going to be a little bit more challenging considering they already have 3 losses. I think the Big 12 champion probably ends up being 16-2, 15-3, and I just don't know if there's much room left for Iowa State to air. Considering their schedule, getting to 15-3 would be pretty challenging for them. But this has certainly been one of the best teams in the country to this point in the season. However, I think we're just now going to start learning a lot about what this team has because 5 of their last 7 or 8 games are against the 5, 6 best teams in the Big 12. And it begins on Saturday with Kansas before a big Monday game in Hilton Coliseum against Houston. After that, they go on the road to BYU. And then later in the season, they play on the road at Arizona and then also Texas Tech. So I would say it is also a victim of the Big 12 stacking its
The
schedule, just
the
like the
back
rest of
end
the team.
schedule. It's awesome, isn't it? It's just the
I,
best.
I love it. I host morning radio in Des Moines, and my co-host was like, "No, I don't love it. Actually, I wish that it was more balanced out." And I'm thinking to myself, I think this is great because everyone's attention is shifting to college basketball now that the college football playoff is over, the Super Bowl is over, and then it's time to focus on college basketball in this country. I love it. I think it's great, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun in the last 5, 6 weeks of the Big 12's regular season.
There's no better way, to get ready for the NCAA tournament than playing, 5 teams that might make it
Yeah.
to the Final Four. Alec, I just kind of want to ask you, just, you kind of mentioned it there a little bit. Iowa State's 21-3 right now. Took that first loss to Kansas, obviously, and then followed that with the Cincinnati loss, and then TCU this past Tuesday. And a lot of what I've seen on social media from Cyclone fans is talking about those February collapses, right?
Yeah.
Those late season collapses that Iowa State has kind of been prone to. What makes this team different? Because you said you still have a lot of high hopes in this team. What makes this team different? What makes you think that they won't fall victim to kind of the same pattern?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the discussion about that started to begin back in January when they lost back-to-back games to Kansas and Cincinnati. There was the whole January swoon or the Otzelberger fade discussion after a really strong non-conference, and it begins in January. I think a year ago, it's important to remember that Keyshawn Gilbert was essentially not a big factor for them during the last month of the season, month plus, didn't continue with the team into the postseason because of a groin injury. Tamin Lipsey was playing with a broken thumb throughout much of the Big 12 season. Milan Momcilovic missed, I think, 6 or 7 games last year because of a broken bone in his hand. Lipsey had other injuries as well. So like, all of those things kind of contributed to Iowa State going from, I think it was 7-1 at one point last year in Big 12 play, all the way down to 13-7 at the end of the regular season, missing a double bye, but still securing a number 3 seed in the NCAA tournament ultimately. And then if you go back to 2024, which I think is probably Otzelberger's best team to date, if you're not counting this season's team, which like I said, I think we're going to learn a lot about this team over the last 5-6 weeks. If they end the regular season 4-2 against these really good teams left on the schedule, I think this team probably takes the mantle. But that team finished 13-5 in Big 12 play. They won, I think, 4 or 5 of their last 6, if I remember correctly, and then they advanced to the Sweet 16. I don't know how much I feel like they fall apart in February as much as just the schedule got difficult last year. They had injury issues last year as well. And though this year it's going to get tested, right? Because the schedule does get so difficult, and it begins, like I said earlier, on Saturday with KU, and then it has Houston on Monday, and then on Saturday they're on the road in Provo against BYU. You get the reprieve against Utah, but that's a long trip out in the mountains, and altitude and everything else. It's still a game Iowa State should win. And then 2 of your last 3 are against Texas Tech and Hilton, and then you go on the road to play the number 1 team in the country right now, Arizona, who has just 1 loss. KU fans know who that came against. And then you get to end the year against Bobby Hurley, and probably his last regular season game as Arizona State's head coach. So I think
Kansas
we're gonna
gets
see
Kansas
if
gets them
it.
right before that.
Yeah, we're gonna see if they do struggle down the stretch. I'm not at a point where I'm pressing the panic button with them, but I do think I'm very intrigued to see what happens in the next 2 or 3, because I think that will be really telling about how good this team is. Because like most teams in the Big 12 to this point, they just haven't played anyone that good. Like UCF is probably the lone non-KU Big 12 opponent that Iowa State has played that's going to go to the NCAA tournament. And UCF, think of them however you will, they're not a top 40 team in Ken Pom. They are horrible on the road, and Iowa State pounded them by 30 points. So, I don't personally respect UCF that much. Johnny Dawkins, good guy, has some good players. I don't think they're that good. So it's just one of those deals where it's Iowa State hasn't played a top 40 team in Ken Pom other than the road game at KU since the start of Big 12 play at the beginning of January.
Hey, respect UCF. Got a big win over Texas Tech. Come on, man. Theme is
Yeah, at
full.
home. See, that's
Keep
my
balling.
point. They
I,
they leave Orlando and they look like last year's UCF team. They're
I,
abysmal away from Orlando.
I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm just playing. Uh, I kind of wanted to, get into the game on Saturday. Obviously, last time, 84-63 Kansas, and I think the story of the game was Tamin Lipsey, Josh Jefferson combined for 22 points, but they were just 8 of 29 from the field in that game. I guess kind of what stood out to you about Kansas's defense the first go around, and what do you think are some ways Iowa State can kind of regroup and attack? Because I don't think 63 points is going to beat Kansas, especially it sounds like Darren Peterson is making his way back here.
There is no sport in America that is more difficult to follow than college basketball. It can be overwhelming. That's where the Field of 68 Daily comes into play. The Daily is your go-to source for injury updates, recruiting news, and transfer portal additions that actually matter. For just $50 a year, get access to the same information that your favorite team's coaching staff is subscribed for. Quality content can be hard to find in the college basketball space. The Daily is here to help you with that.
Are we sure he's going to play?
Hey, Self said today, he was sick, and he was on the court yesterday, not full speed, on the court today. Hopefully he's full speed tomorrow and then ready to go against Iowa State. And I will ask you about that whole situation,
Okay,
Alec.
great. I was going to say we need to get an over-under on Darren Peterson minutes, game by game prop bet that we can all start to hit as a general public, the over, the under, whatever we're feeling. Now, as it relates to that Iowa State KU game back in Allen Fieldhouse, back in mid-January, the biggest thing that stuck out to me about the way KU attacked them defensively was they packed the paint. They seemed to kind of say to TJ Otzelberger and Iowa State, we don't think that you have enough people who can make shots outside of Milan Momcilovic. and we're going to leave all of your other players on the court open and pack the paint, and we're going to see if you can beat us that way. And they couldn't do it. Momcilovic didn't have his greatest game. He went 2 of 6 from three, I think, that night. Jefferson really struggled. He had 5 turnovers. Flory Badunga, I thought, was phenomenal defensively that night for KU, and I think that was really kind of the start of a really positive turn for him on the defensive end. I mean, I think you could argue he's been the best defensive player in the country since that point. JoJo Tugler probably in that mix. I thought Krivas was really good on the defensive end for Arizona on Monday night as well. But Badunga certainly in that conversation at the very least. And I thought packing the paint really forced Jefferson into tough situations, forced him into turnovers. Scoring at the rim became really challenging for Iowa State. I think they went 12 of 26 on layups. And that's surprising because Iowa State is in the 90th percentile nationally in scoring at the rim. They're making about 60% of their layups on the year, and they made less than 50% of them in Allen Fieldhouse. So I think Kansas is going to do the same thing that they did to Iowa State earlier this season. I think the way Iowa State has to counteract that is by scoring off their defense and seeing if you can force Kansas into more turnovers than they did earlier this season. See if you can play a little bit faster, get in transition. And this is an Iowa State team that's been much better offensively in the half court than they have been in previous seasons under TJ Altsberger. But if you're Bill Self and if you're KU, like, I feel like your process and your plan worked really well earlier this season. I don't know why you would evaluate changing it too drastically entering Saturday.
Yeah, and Kansas went under everything in that first game and then kind of just face guarded Milan. And that seemed to be a formula
Well, and
that
like
worked.
not only did they go under, like they just left shooters. Like they just were like, we're not going to step out and guard you on the perimeter. Like they dorked everyone except Momcilovic, and it was something that Cincinnati did as well. And teams have kind of done it since then, but it just hasn't worked as well because they've been bad teams that Iowa State has pounded that can't keep Iowa State out of the paint as well and protect the rim as well. So I think it'll be a similar strategy for KU.
And I'm really interested to see how Flory kind of continues, his DPOY campaign against Jefferson as well, because that will be really key in this game. All right, Alec, I want to ask you about the Darren Peterson situation, just as, because I've been covering it, dealing with it, listening to everybody's opinions all year long, national media guys, local media. As somebody who covers another team exclusively, just like what have you heard? What do you make of kind of everything that's been going on? Self kind of talked about it a little bit today, saying it's total BS. The narratives that have been put out there. He's like, yes, he had a hamstring, he had cramps, and he was sick. Like, and he was kind of just talking about how, yeah, that all stacking up probably doesn't look the best, but the narratives are BS. Just kind of what is your take on the whole situation?
So I find it to be very multi-layered. Um, I think on the surface, it's easy to just call him soft and like assume that he should be playing through some of these things. Let's start with the cramps, right? Because like the cramps have, how many times has he missed extended period of a game or a game in total because of cramps? I mean, at least 4 or 5.
Probably five-ish games. Yeah.
Okay. It's a really bad look to me when Bryson Tiller gets cramps on Monday night against Arizona, comes back in the game. Koa Pete gets cramps for Arizona on the front court, comes back in the game. It's like, oh, you can't play through cramps. Like you get a water and you get a Gatorade. You get, if you want to go full bore, do the mustard thing. You can do that, and you can get back out there. That to me would be frustrating if I was a KU fan. But the thing that I keep going back to is that he seemingly keeps trying to come back and play. Like if you wanted to shut it down and just be done, like the kid at Arkansas a few years ago did, or who else did that
I
recently?
mean, basically, Jaden Quaintance has done that.
Yeah, it seems like Quaintance, I guess, has kind of done it at Kentucky. Like Peterson could do that. And like he would be the number one pick and it would be end of story and we can all just like move on and assume that he's done and he's not going to play for KU again. But he keeps trying to come back. So like that does yield, in my opinion, like a thought that okay, what he's dealing with is actually like keeping him out of games. But I think he can play through certain things. Like the flu thing on Monday, Like, come on, dude. Like, get an IV. Like, eat a banana before the game and get out there and at least give it a go. Especially because you know that was a huge game. That's a massive opportunity for KU at that point in the season. Everyone in the college basketball world was watching it. And you're like, okay, you're out there for them, so you can't go. Like, come on. Like, that sucks. Um, and then it's also just weird the way that it's been handled, I think, by KU's staff. Like, was it 18 first half minutes that he played against BYU? Or he scored 18 points in the first half. And you're thinking, God, like he looks as good as everyone has said he could look. And then he doesn't play the last 16-ish minutes, and BYU nearly comes back and completes a massive win. So I see both sides of it to where I get frustrated as someone who enjoys watching really good basketball players that he seemingly like doesn't want to push it and doesn't want to play through anything that could be a strain to him. And I understand why he does it and why the people around him don't want him to push it too hard because of the type of asset that he is. But it's also like, man, like the entire KU student section barks like dogs every time Melvin Council dribbles up and down the floor. Like have some dog in you and like play through something, darn it. And I think it's also fair to wonder, like, we get to March and we get to Kansas City for the Big 12 tournament. If KU's a top four seed and they advance to the Big 12 title game, like, how can one reasonably expect him to play Thursday, Friday, Saturday?
Especially on that glass floor.
Yeah, that too. Or we get to the NCAA tournament, like how can someone expect him to play 35 plus minutes twice in a weekend? Like, I just don't know how we can expect that to happen at this point. And like, I'll be hand up honest, like entering the season, I didn't love this KU team because I thought so much of it was going to be put on Peterson, and like I just didn't love the supporting cast. Now I've been proven wrong, and like I think this is a team that can go to the Final Four. Like they've exceeded my expectations. Like I think if they're going to win a national championship, like they need him to play, and I would like to see him play like 35 plus minutes in 6 straight games for
Well,
me to buy them as a national title contender. Until he does it, like I struggle to do it. So that's where I'm at with it. I'd like to know what you feel and you think as someone who's like
I
so
just
close to it
think
for KU.
I think the timing of the sickness was probably the worst possible timing whatsoever, right? Because like Darren made his way back. He comes and plays against Texas Tech, plays
Yeah.
34 minutes, hits the game winner, and then Utah comes along. He leads the team in minutes. Didn't really play particularly well in either of those games, but at least as a Kansas fan, you're like he's out there. He's out there. He's making it to the end of games. And that was something that hadn't really been seen. If he goes out there, he plays again against Arizona, plays 30 plus minutes, whatever. Even if Kansas doesn't win, I feel like the whole, like literally everything is pretty much behind Kansas to
Yeah.
some extent. If Darren Peterson just plays in that game, because I don't think that this is going to be an issue moving forward. I think Peterson kind of got over the cramping situation a little bit. We saw that in Texas Tech and Utah. And then just to be sick, like it's literally just the worst possible thing that could have happened. And I do agree to some extent, like probably could have played through it, but Self said the doctors told him,
Which, like,
he
when has the
couldn't.
team doctor been like, no, you have the flu, you can't play? Like, you see, like, that's what I mean with like the mystery of it all.
Yeah,
It's like,
I
what are
get it.
we like? I just would love to know the full story. And I think I forget who I heard say this. I think it was on After Dark with your guys' network. Someone was like, I can't wait to see his medical reports at the combine. And that
Yeah.
was when it was the whole like quad cramp hamstring type deal. And it was like, shoot, I can't either. I can't wait till those come out. Like I can't imagine the flu stuff is still a deal. And like the ankle thing, was it the Colorado game that he missed with the ankle?
Yeah, or he hurt it in Colorado, finished the Colorado game playing on the ankle, and then he
Yeah.
missed Kansas State the following Saturday. That was
Which I
Tuesday,
mean,
and then
if you're playing a team that has a bunch of guys who don't even deserve to be in the uniform, as Jerome Tang once said, then who cares? I don't actually blame him for missing the K State game with the ankle. Like to me, that's whatever. Those swell up, those get tight after you sit on them for a little bit. Like I actually believe that one was full. Like, hey, no go. But the quad cramp thing, the flu thing, like I look at that a little bit more skeptically. That maybe Bill Self would like me to, considering what he said today about a lot of the narratives on social media.
I appreciate your take because yeah, I always wonder, how does it look to other beat reporters stuff like that. So thanks for your insight there. All right, Alec, let's get into predictions to wrap this up. How do you see Saturday going? I can start if you want.
Yeah, go for it. I'm actually very curious to hear what you have to say because KU's obviously won 8 in a row, but I feel like they're coming into a pretty big competitive competitive game, challenging opportunity.
Ken Palm has it at 74-68, Iowa State right now. I'm honestly going to lean a little bit higher scoring. I think I'm going to go 83 to 80 Kansas.
That'd be the
I,
first
I'm
win in Hilton in at least 3+ years.
I just think I really do, Alec, think that this team is different. Not necessarily, talent-wise, but up here. Team's a lot different. I mean, Melvin, you mentioned it. Melvin is one of the craziest characters that I've seen come through Kansas, and if he doesn't fear an Arizona 7-footer and Koa Pete and can just chuck up 25 shots with no regrets at all against Arizona, I think Melvin will really. I think it'll be just fine in the Hilton Magic and kind of really embrace that. So I think Kansas keeps it rolling. I really do. The Jayhawks are hot. I think Kansas is honestly for Iowa State's worst matchup in the Big 12, maybe. Just the way Kansas can. I think they have somebody who can roll with Jefferson. Tiller down there with Buchanan is a good matchup, and then Kansas defensively has been able to show that they can kind of slow down the guard. So I'm going to roll with Kansas to keep it going. And I believe that would be 9 in a row
Yeah,
for the Jayhawks. And then, you got Oklahoma State and Cincinnati, and then a big one against Houston to maybe possibly go for what would that be, 12 in a row. So I'm rolling with the Jayhawks.
I think you make an interesting point about KU being the most difficult matchup for Iowa State in the Big 12. I would go to Arizona. I think they're a difficult matchup with all of their size and their depth on the interior. I think BYU can be a difficult matchup for them, considering the size and athleticism Debanza has. Saunders' shooting ability from the weak side of the floor has given Iowa State issues the last couple of years there. Kato's athleticism, too. I certainly see the argument for Kansas, so I think it's an interesting one. Um, I think that these next two games are going to be very telling for Iowa State and how good they really are. I know I've kind of said that here a little bit before. I did something earlier this week on my radio show, and our producer asked us, what percent confidence would you give Iowa State to going 2-0? And I was like, 60, 65. Because I think if they can get Kansas, then you get Houston on Big Monday. Big Monday road games are traditionally pretty tough for teams. You get such a short turnaround. You have to travel. You get really no prep. The one thing that would swing in favor of Houston in that opportunity is just like Iowa State, so much about what they do well is predicated on like what they do well. Like they don't scout and change what they do too much relative to their opponent. So I think that would favor Houston in a Big Monday setting compared to a team that does kind of alter some of their approach relative to their opponent. I think Iowa State gets the win this weekend against KU. I think it'll be a really close game. I think about the way that they responded after the loss to Cincinnati, which felt very similarly to the way they played at TCU in a lot of respects, was really positive. Now, I get that KU's way better than UCF coming to Hilton Coliseum. Again, UCF on the road, as I was talking about. Not the same team in Orlando. I think Iowa State wins a close one. But if KU wins, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. I think I would go something along the lines of Iowa State 77, KU 74, 73. But it's a type of situation where I'm really intrigued to see how Iowa State's able to take advantage of KU leaving shooters open, if that's something that they do again. Everyone other than Momcilovic, are you able to does Jefferson shoot it more from the perimeter, perhaps off the bounce? Does Jamarian Bateman, the freshman, have a quality game again? Because I believe he played well back in Allen Fieldhouse earlier this season. And then they need Nate Heisey to shoot it well. I think that's a huge X factor for them in this one. Because if he can make KU pay for leaving him open, if that's something that Bill Self chooses to do, I think that would really swing the game towards Iowa State. And then if Killian Torrey can get one or two to fall as well, But yeah, I mean, KU's lost 3 straight up here at Ames. I have to imagine that Bill Self would like to swing this back in their favor on the road. In what is one of the more regional, I guess you could say, matchups in the Big 12 now. I don't know if you want to call it a huge rivalry, but I think there's some increased awareness to it on each side, I guess you could say.
It's a top 10 game. You know,
Yeah,
it's going to be rocking there in Hilton. And I'm gonna see you there. I'm actually going to be there
awesome.
for the Kansas game, and I think I'm going to stick around to watch Houston
Good.
as well.
Will
Before I
this be
let
your
you
first
go,
time in Hilton?
what's up?
Will this be your first time in Hilton?
No, I went last year, and Kansas. So there's a point in the game where Kansas was getting absolutely blown out, right? And
Yes.
the Jayhawk slant rider Shea was sitting next to me, and he was, just saying how, Kansas had no chance, this and that. And I was still feeling all right. I was like, you know what? No, like I think Kansas has a comeback in them. And Shea bet me a meal that Kansas would not come within I think it was 7 points or 6 points or something like that.
Yeah.
And I said deal. And then Kansas came, I think they came within exactly six and then ended up getting absolutely blown
Yeah,
out.
they ended up losing that game by close to 20, if I remember correctly.
Still have not gotten that meal to this day, I will say. So Shay, if you're watching this, I think I'm gonna grab that meal, collect it while we're in Ames, since that was the place the deal was made. Before I let you go, Alec, I want to ask you this. Who is winning the Big 12? You got Arizona and Houston up there at 10-1, Kansas at 9-2 in second place, and then Iowa State and Tech tied for fourth at 8-3. After that, I think those are kind of the five teams, competing for it still. Who wins it?
Yeah, I think it'll probably end up being Houston or Arizona. I think it depends on how some of those games down the stretch work themselves out. I do think that I have a running joke with friends because I started covering the Big 12 back in 2022, 2023, when I was on the K-State beat. And my friends were always like, Bill Self's inevitable. Kansas basketball is inevitable. And that KU team ended up being a number 1 seed. They were obviously very good. Then Bill Self has the medical deal and doesn't coach in the postseason. They lose in the round of 32. So I finally bought into that because I was like, all right, I don't actually think this Kansas team is that good. Because they weren't that visually impressive when you watch them. You know what I mean? Like Jalen Wilson was a good player, but they weren't oh,
KJ Adams was playing the five that year.
yeah,
Let's say
they
that.
were good. They were good, but they weren't the least impressive 1 seed that Bill Self has had in his miraculous run at KU. Well, then Kelvin Sampson comes into the league and he wins it outright back-to-back years. So now I have a running joke with them that I'm like, this is Kelvin's league. And I think Arizona losing on Monday night really opens the door for Kelvin's Cougs, as I like to call him, to just come through and find a way to go 17-1 and win the league and
Wouldn't
16.
surprise me. I
Yeah,
had
because it's
Houston
Houston.
preseason, and I'm not wavering from it now.
Yeah, I think Houston is certainly capable of doing it. I think Arizona is one of the 2 best teams in the country. I think their floor is probably higher than anyone in America because of how they play. I'm excited to see the race down the stretch. I think it comes down to one of those 2 teams. I think they play once in Houston, if I remember correctly. So I'm excited to
Yeah.
see how that one goes.
Yeah, I'm thinking could be a three-way tie too at the top. You never know. Could be 3 teams up there with 3 losses, and we talked about the back end schedule. It's going to be a crazy February to end here, going in to early March. All right, Alec, thank you so much for joining us today on the Hum. I'll see you here soon in Ames.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on. Always fun to hop on and talk ball.
Yes, sir. All right, you guys. We will be back here on the Hum podcast after the Iowa State game. I will be in Ames with Bezdek. So maybe we'll have a little special in person with each other live episode instead of going on Zoom. So that'll be fun. Thank you everybody for watching. Go ahead and like, subscribe, comment down low. We will see you next time.